I did not watch a second of the NBA draft, but that is not going to stop me from talking about it. I'm going to give you my takeaways from what the teams did and decided to do. There's one big move that it's unheard of. I don't know how this certain GM got rid of the Albatross contract. That was some tough NBA news if you're a true NBA fan. Then we're going to get into some baseball. One of my new favorite quarterbacks, the Flailing Birds, and an NFL whip around to end the show. All on today's episode 34 of the Chris Rennie Show with your favorite show host, Christopher Rennie. Welcome in and enjoy the show. I can't do this anymore. What's this guy saying? Who gave these national radio hosts these jobs? Jeez. Can't even understand that guy. What's he even talking about? I can't take it anymore. Those national media personalities making you feel like that. Make a change. Listen to this idiot about the sports that matter from the opinion that matters. Haha, you said it, not me. Now for today's takes from the most opinionated host in sports talk. So, to me, the NBA draft is the hardest one to predict and project players long term. You know, the only time NBA teams really actually get it right is when the number one pick is a guy like LeBron James. Outside of the one automatic all-time great player, you know, we've had them recently, the Zion Williamsons, the Ben Simmons, you know, the guys who have excelled in the NBA immediately after the time they started. Blake Griffin, you know, those guys are seen as unsuccessful first overall picks, which is mind-boggling to me. You know, Blake Griffin's never really won anything, but he's had a very successful career, and he's been a very good leader on every team he's been on. You know, so there's a lot of things you get from a number one pick, but the problem I have when it comes to the NBA is the way we evaluate and appreciate the players themselves. When you think about it, the NBA, it is the hardest one to predict success because they are drafting the youngest players. You know, in baseball, they're not expected to contribute immediately. Yes, there's a timetable, but even if you're a first-round pick, you're 17, 18 years old, you've got 4 years until you're really expected to start contributing. And then you've got 3 or 4 years to really maximize yourself before anything happens. I mean, I think baseball players are a little protected with the arbitration, honestly. I think it allows them to play, it allows them to make more money, and it allows them to maintain the leveled expectation that comes with the sport. Because the difference is, when you look at a great shooter, it is, around 45% from the floor, 35% from deep's a pretty good shooter. You know, that's a successful NBA player to me. I know, when you have a number one pick, it's not about finding a successful NBA player. It's the same thing with the NFL draft. You know, if they don't come away like gangbusters, like Jadeveon Clowney's been one of the best players in the NFL for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And he is kind of looked upon as an afterthought as a defensive end when you talk about the best in the league. But he's still been a Pro Bowler. He's still been an All-Pro. He's still had his dominant years. He's lived up to the expectations. But when you're a number one overall pick, living up to the expectations is failure. And there's no sport more like that than basketball. All right, and I'm talking about this because historically, there have been some huge NBA busts, bigger than any other sport, I honestly believe. And a lot of them you probably could have read it immediately. What's his name? The guy who was taken between Darko Milicic. He never seemed to enjoy playing basketball. He never seemed to really want to come overseas. He seemed like he was going to be homesick from the start. And look at how bad those Pistons teams, if they took LeBron or had the opportunity to take LeBron, would have taken LeBron. It's not the Pistons' fault. But the unfortunate circumstances is the players after were Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony, and a bunch of other Hall of Famers in 2003. So that is why the comparisons happen. In each draft, there are players who are seen as elite. The 2020 draft did not interest me because we are coming off the draft with Zion, RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish, and a bunch of college superstars. This year, the NCAA tournament didn't happen. College basketball season got canceled halfway through. So by the time my interest starts engaging into college basketball and it starts getting my full attention, I wasn't able to watch this year. So when it came to evaluating players this year in the draft, it was a crapshoot for me, personally. I thought when LaMelo Ball was projected to go number 1, I was like, you're crazy. Then I went and I looked and I was like, oh my God, all right. And then Anthony Edwards ended up going number 1 to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I was kind of shook, okay? I know they don't need a big man. They didn't need James Wiseman, so I didn't expect him to go that route, the Timberwolves. I didn't expect him to go the route they did, though. I am personally not an Anthony Edwards fan. And then reading into some of the stuff I saw last night about Anthony Edwards, this is why number 1 picks are a bust. Because I think when it comes to a sport, the most important aspect of picking a player number 1 overall is sensing that there is an overarching commitment to being great at the sport. LeBron has it. KD has it. The best of the best in the league have it. James Harden has it. The guys in the MVP conversation every year have that in them. Giannis Antetokounmpo. When he went 16th, I read this story the other day. It was interesting. He barely had any film on him in the second division in Greek basketball. It's not even really seen as a pro league. It's more of an amateur league, a pro-am league. And he was drafted because of his natural ability to create space and separation with his ability. I couldn't see that if I was a scout. I just saw some tall dude in Greece. But that's what happens in the NBA draft. And Giannis had shown he had a commitment to greatness. Anthony Edwards, and this isn't a knock on him, maybe he'll find it, but he has that sort of Kyrie Irving, wants to be bigger than basketball type mindset, where there's a lot of talent. He's not as talented as Kyrie Irving. I'm going to put that out there right now. Kyrie Irving, the reason he's doing that and he's still playing is because he is an ultra-talented guard. He's one of the best who have ever set foot on a basketball court from a talent standpoint. Anthony Edwards, I didn't see enough from him at Georgia. There was times where you can't be the number 1 pick and disappear from games. All right. See, Ben Simmons didn't disappear from games at LSU, but he was limited. That was the difference. I didn't see failure in Ben Simmons when he disappeared. I just saw an inability to shoot from further outside than 15 feet. That was what I saw. Unfortunately, his other skills were so great, and they were kind of taken away from because he went to LSU, and I'm assuming he probably got paid to go to LSU the more I think about it. But that's a story for a different day. I'm not breaking anything. I'm not breaking any news. Everyone knows LSU is shady. Their athletic department has been running funds through a children's hospital. It's a common story. But once again, story for a different day. This is about the NBA draft. But yeah, looking at the draft results, I see James Wiseman. He's tall. He's good. I heard good things about James Wiseman at his time in Memphis. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to play much because of the NCAA stuff. The Hornets drafted LaMelo Ball. Honestly, my favorite pick in the draft. I think the Hornets finally are doing something right. I think LaMelo is a really talented player, and I think his time in Australia, he proved it. The Cavs, my favorite team, drafted Isaac Okoro. I wanted Okongwu or Obi Toppin. Onyeka Okongwu went the next draft pick. Okoro's a good, solid player, but he's not the type of player I think the Cavs needed with how many front court players they already have with Larry Nance, with Andre Drummond, with all those players. But, I'll take him. I like Isaac Okoro. I liked him more for the Hawks than I did for the Cavs. The Pistons got Killian Hayes, Obi Toppin, went to the Knicks, and then the European star went to the Wizards. So, it'll be interesting. A European import in Washington, D.C. Haven't heard that one before. Get it because of, delegates and diplomats and stuff. Yeah, I thought it was a clever one. Tyler Halliburton to the Kings was a pick I liked. Cole Anthony to the Magic was solid. Then the trade started happening, and once again, they traded. The one surprise to me was R.J. Hampton falling all the way to 24. Reportedly traded to Nuggets after first being dealt to the Pelicans. All right. I thought the Celtics drafting Peyton Pritchard was interesting. That's very off-brand for them. Peyton Pritchard's a very big minus on the defense side of the ball, but he is a bucket getter. Maybe they're looking for that instant offense off the bench. Maybe they're looking for that long-term developmental point guard product to replace Kemba Walker at some point. I don't know. It was just one that kind of was like, whoa, I didn't see that one coming. I didn't see Peyton Pritchard being a first pick. Years ago, he would have been probably a top 10 pick because how good he was his senior year. And then my favorite draft pick of the night, and this was it because I watched, there's actually two, and they're both in the second round, all right? I really liked, number one, Cassius Winston to, let me find it again, Cassius Winston to the Thunder reportedly traded to the Wizards, all right? I like the value they're getting there. I think Winston is a very good basketball player. All right, and you go to Washington, you have him behind John Wall, you have him behind Bradley Beal in the guard rotation. He's going to be an elite six-man by year 3 in the league. I can guarantee it. He is a guy who can get buckets. He's got a steady outside shot. He's good in the mid-range. He's good all over the court, but most notably, he makes the right play at all times, and he can score, and he's a plus athlete, but in the NBA, a plus athlete's an average athlete, so it's going to be where Cassius Winston needs to improve, and if they use him in a starting role, this is going to be a vital improvement he needs to make to his game. And then this is where I show my impartiality. He needs to become a better defender if he's going to be a starter in the league. It's true. A lot of college stars are very bad defenders in the NBA because they get away with being a good defender in college. Cassius Winston was an okay defender in college. There's a reason he had a lot of battles against guards. Because he couldn't guard them, but he could get buckets on them. That's it. All right, so then the other one I liked was Nico Benayen, another guard. He is Italian. He plays for the Italian national team. He represents his dad's side's origination, nationality. Yes. That's the word I was looking for. And he's a good shooter. He's a good outside guy. I saw comparisons to Caruso last night. I 1,000% disagree. I do not think he looks anything like Alex Caruso. I think he's a bit better of a ball handler, a little less good at defense, and a better outside shooter. But I think with the Wizards culture, he's going to get a lot of opportunities right away. I think that's where it gets different. And then the last draft pick I really liked was also a second-round draft pick. Bucks draft Jordan and Nwora. All right, so the reason I say these 3 second-round draft picks is the picks I like, because they are going to come into the league with no pressure, no value, and they only exceed expectations. So it's all money. It's like when you're on Robinhood and you buy the $2.30 stock hoping it's going to rise to 10. Okay, that is what a second-round draft pick in the NBA is. It's not a gamble. You pick the player you like, you pick the player you think can develop the longest and provide something to your team, whether that is hustle plays, rebounds, blocks, outside shooting, three-point shooting exclusively, no defense, no dribbling, just a cannon from outside. Then you go further down the list. Can they become a versatile player who can pass, keep the offense moving, fit into that starting lineup? You have your 2 stars, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson. Can you play alongside them and not slow down the rotation and that? So when you're drafting in the second round, you want high energy, high IQ. You want good three-point shooting. You want players you can look at and you can mold into rotational squad players in the NBA. See, that's the problem. In the first 10 picks, if they're not all-stars in a year or two, it's a miss. All right? And I can tell you, of these 10, I think maybe 1 or 2 have the potential to do that. LaMelo Ball, James Wiseman, I think are the only 2 that are going to be legitimate all-stars in this draft. And then the rest of them are going to be either solid role players or just long-term pros who never really find their footing. Unfortunately for Obi Toppin, my favorite player in the draft, the Dayton Flyer, University of Dayton, yeah, I know. So, unfortunately for him, he's a Knick, so there goes at least 5 years of his career. But with what the Knicks are building, I like Obi Toppin there. So, yeah, I think the NBA draft was not a successful viewer experience, but I think a lot of teams got the players they wanted. It's one of the drafts where there wasn't really any star. We're coming off one of the biggest drafts in, I want to say a decade at least. So this draft was never going to be as good as last one. And I say this every year. It's actually something like what Joel Klatt said. So Joel Klatt said Ohio State's team isn't as good this year. All right, well, Joel, I'm going to put this into basketball terms and college football terms and all sports terms, okay? This is just a lesson for my listeners, all right? A lesson for the listeners, a new segment with Chris Rennie, brought to you by Old Spice. Lesson for the listeners. All right. In sports, we see what's in front of us. The best team this year might not be as good as the best team last year. It's why there is an argument about the 73-9 Warriors and the Chicago Bulls. Yes, they're different years. Yes, your team can be worse the following year, but win a national championship. That's how it works. And yes, in an NBA draft, and this is where I wanted to take it, in an NFL draft, you had Elway to Marino. That was one of the greatest drafts of all time for quarterbacks. You've had some of the best defensive drafts in this decade. Just elite defensive player after elite defensive player. I believe it was Myles Garrett's year where it was just elite defenders all over the place. And not every draft is built the same. Not every draft is going to have an all-time elite great player. Not every draft is going to have a once-in-a-generational talent. That's just not the way it works. Every 5, every 6, depends. Sometimes you get drafts through 2-3 years in a row where first pick's elite, first pick's elite, first pick's elite. And that is how you want it to be. But unfortunately, that wasn't how this year was. And I don't want people to put the same amount of pressure you're putting on Anthony Edwards, James Wiseman, LaMelo Ball. I don't want you to have the same expectations as you do for these 3 as you did for Zion Williamson, R.J. Barrett, the superstars from last year, Ja Morant. Because those players were much better at this point in time in their careers than any other players drafted. Okay, so what I'm saying is don't use last year as a comparison for this year. If Anthony Edwards doesn't come out and just blow up the spot like Zion did, don't be surprised. Because Anthony Edwards was never going to be like Zion. I think he's a talented player. I think he's got a lot of potential if he really finds it in himself. He wants to be a basketball player. And I think that's the same with quite a few of the people in the top 10. It's different every year. Drafts are not built the same. The first pick and the 60th pick. I think this was one of the deepest drafts in a long time where you're going to find a lot of solid rotational players. But I don't think it's near any of the recent 4 or 5 drafts with the top end talent. And that's the NBA draft conversation. All right, I have one more thing I want to talk about, or 2 more things NBA-wise. One was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. All right, so Daryl Morey has been the 76ers GM for no less than a week, it feels like. And there's this big albatross contract, all right? hanging over the head. It hung over the head of the Celtics. It's hanging over the head of the 76ers currently, but no more. All right. A trade in principle was agreed to get rid of Al Horford. All right, the Al Horford trade. And I'm going to let you guys in on a secret. There was a lot of people shocked that the Philadelphia 76ers sending Al Horford 2 draft picks to Oklahoma City Thunder for Danny Green was crazy. And I'm like, dude, Daryl Morey just fleeced these boys. All right? Or yeah, I get it. 2 draft picks, Oklahoma City. That's what they're fighting for. Danny Green. But that Al Horford contract locked up the 76ers and anything they could have done. My first thought when I saw it was now the Philadelphia 76ers have some ability to move around some pieces. They got a good outside shooter, so they've moved now for 2 outside shooters. And they're surrounding, hear me out, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid with floor spacing. See, that is what they failed to do while they were building the process, all right? And that, unfortunately, is the next step. And the Thunder will be sending guard Terrence Ferguson to the Sixers along with Green. So they got 2 players for Al Horford that probably to make the money work. And they got out of his $109 million contract. That's unbelievable. So, really, this move was almost exactly what you'd expect. They dealt Josh Richardson, got the 36th pick. They got Seth Curry from the Dallas Mavericks. He's also Doc Rivers' son-in-law, so keep it in the family. But there is an opportunity for the 76ers. The East is wide open. I don't care what you say about the Nets. I'm going to talk about them too, actually. So 2 more after this one. But what this was an awesome opportunity for the 76ers to get rid of someone who wasn't providing the value they initially expected. I think last year Al Horford was one of the biggest fish out of water. I think he was a fish in the wrong type of... It was like you taking a saltwater tuna and throwing him in a fish tank without salt water. It can live, but it's not live in, you know? That is exactly what Al Horford was in Philadelphia. I like this move. I like what the 76ers are doing. Seth Curry is a decent ball handler. This is something I thought about. I think there's going to be some of that NBA overarching drama brought into the league. You know, if the 76ers play the Clippers and Paul George, you know, Seth Curry, obviously, you saw that beef come full surface in the playoffs. Now, Seth Curry is Doc Rivers' son. I think that's part of it. You're going to have Doc Rivers' new real son, Seth Curry, playing against Austin Rivers in the... I don't know where he's at, honestly, anymore. I think he's still in the Rockets, but there's going to be beef. It's what you want in the NBA. Unfortunately, they have not been able to get past the 76ers. The 76ers haven't been able to get past the second round. It's time. The shot against the Kawhi shot against them was just built different. So it's really the Thunder have really acquired quite a bit of assets. I think that was a win for them. If that's what their plan is to just take as many draft picks, utilize them, move up in the draft, take draft position, and move around to get the players you want and the value you want. And I saw this funny meme, and it was the NBA draft lottery in 5 years, and it was all 14 of the lottery picks were Thunder picks. And I am excited to see this stock and stash style approach of the Thunder. I think they're expediting the process, and I think in a few years they're going to have like 15 young players that are all under 23, and we're going to be like, holy crap, how did we let this happen? That's how I feel the Thunders are approaching this. And the Thunder, and the Lightning, and the Thunder. All right, but in addition to the deal involving Green, the Thunder traded future Hall of Famer Chris Paul and Abdel Nadir to Phoenix for Ricky Rubio, Kelly Oubre Jr., Ty Jerome, Jalen Luck, and a 2020 first-round pick earlier this year. Later Wednesday, the Minnesota Timberwolves reached an agreement with Oklahoma City to trade their 17th draft pick, Serbian forward Alexei Pokusevski, for Rubio on the 25th and 28th pick. So I think the long play is getting 30 picks in one single round of the draft. Mic drop. The Thunder own the league. That's what happens there. All right, so yeah, moving forward a little bit further into the show. And the mood's going to come down a little bit. It really is. It's tough. Oh, I hate the Warriors. I'm a Cavs fan. I'm a LeBron fan. The one time the Cavs had something built to last, it ran into a wood chipper. That was the Warriors. And yes, we ended their perfect 73-9. Don't mean a thing without the ring team. And we are still champs, and it was my favorite championship of my life so far. There's beating Alabama as an Ohio State fan, and then there is beating that Warriors team, and it's gonna live with me forever as a sports fan, as a fan of the Cleveland Cavaliers first and foremost, and a fan of LeBron James second most. It was awesome, and unfortunately during that time, I didn't get to appreciate one of the greatest teams to ever play the sport. And as an older man from those times, I was young, I was emotional, I hated the Warriors, I argued about that all the time. The Cavs were better, the Warriors were better. Regardless, I still think if Kevin Love's shoulder didn't come out and Kyrie's knee didn't bust up in game 1, the Cavs are NBA champions. It's 2-2, and I'm not sad thinking about it. I'm happy. We split arguably the most well-constructed team ever put together in basketball history. The greatest modern one so far. And the Cavs ended their perfect four-peat. And that's something, man. That's something to appreciate. And I was excited to watch a full throttle West this year. But, the minute that LeBron guy gets over there, people start wanting to leave. Interesting, right? James Harden. Oh, yeah, I don't want to play for the Rockets anymore. I want to go to the Nets. I hate that. But it's not going to work. I'll talk about that next. But before the draft started yesterday, some little hints at big news came out. Klay Thompson has been coming back from an ACL injury. It was a bad injury. It might have been MCL, but a bad knee injury. He's been rehabbing. He was excited. You saw the milk commercial. Don't drink milk. Drink almond milk. It's better for you. And he was just working out yesterday. And unfortunately, one of the worst injuries an athlete can have. It's actually become a much less evasive surgery, and it's become a much shorter recovery time. But regardless, it's one that's extremely hard, especially for basketball players to come back from. Basketball players more than any other sport. An Achilles injury is the hardest to come back from. So throughout the night yesterday, I'm watching action. I'm watching Gossip Girl with my girlfriend. And I just keep seeing new indications that this is way worse than initially thought. And that Klay Thompson probably tore his Achilles tendon. And this morning I woke up and the first thing I saw was confirmation of that from a bunch of sources I trust. Adrian Wojnarowski, Shams Charania, the big names in the league. And unfortunately, we don't get to see Klay Thompson play basketball next year. And he was fighting back from an ACL injury, and this is the common thing with knee surgeries and knee injuries, and any leg injury, to be honest, is you start overcompensating with another part of your leg, and it unfortunately adds too much stress to that ligament or tendon that is overcompensating for the damaged one, and eventually it becomes damaged itself. And it's very common that you have one or two injuries before you fully recover. And that is unfortunately what happened to Klay Thompson. But the modern marvel of modern medicine, is still here. And I do hope that we get to see Klay Thompson again. And the most fortunate thing about Klay Thompson's game is he's a three-point shooter. And I can tell you he could come back and be a great shooter. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to elevate with his jump shot the same, so it's going to look a little different. And I think that's just going to be more from the mental side. Clay is an all-timer. He is a good dude from what it looks like. And I think he is one of those guys in the NBA that even when you're in the most heated competition, rooting against them and hating their team, you still kind of have an appreciation for them. As a pickup basketball player, I've garnered comparisons to Klay Thompson, and I have not taken them lightly. No dribbles, all three-pointers, a couple easy buckets inside. It's the way to live life, man. Klay Thompson figured it out long ago, and he made the most of it. And he's an elite defender, and it's awesome. It's what we love to hear. But it sucks because he's hurt, and we're going to miss him again. And these are the tough conversations about sports you don't want to have on your podcast, on your radio show, with your players. It's tough, man. It's tough when a player gets hurt. Any level. It's tough when people get hurt. Honestly. And that takes me into the next conversation, last NBA conversation for the day. I keep seeing images flow around the internet. I keep seeing them. People are like, this should give you nightmares if you're a basketball fan. People are like, just give the NBA title to them. Oh my God, this is like the coolest lineup I've ever seen. Those little 16-year-olds, 13-year-olds who don't know anything about the sport. I don't even know what VORP stands for. And you're going to trust them. Net efficiency, net rating, what are all those meanings? They don't even know that stuff, but they use them. Oh, man, I hate NBA Twitter so much. This is not that rant. But this rant comes from the pure stupidity that is NBA Twitter. There is no intelligence, for the most part, in NBA Twitter. I think it's like a 1 in 10 thing. In college football Twitter, I'd say it's like a 3 in 10 thing. In NFL Twitter, it's like a 5 in 10 thing. But in MLB Twitter, if you're a real MLB fan, you pretty much know baseball. I'm half foot out of the door in Major League Baseball, but it's true. I think NBA Twitter might be the worst thing to ever happen to any sports league. It's people throwing out. You know how many super team arguments I see every day on the internet, and I hate it. Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving, and LeBron were a super team. Cavs fans, I don't care. It's true. It was. That is how they were perceived. You had 3 all-star players uniting. The Warriors, yes, I get it. 3 of their players were homegrown. Still a super team. They had KD. It becomes even bigger than that. All right, the Rockets, the Thunder, super teams. All right, the only super team to not win a championship in this decade was the Mavericks. Oh, the Spurs. Oh, yeah, you mean the one team with 3 All-Stars, 3 Hall of Famers on it? Oh, that's not a super team. It's a super team-driven league. It always has been. Man, okay. But that's not what this is about. Yeah, it is actually about this. You know what? I'm done. All right, I'm here. I'm talking about it. We're just going to get it out of my chest. I need to put this out there. Were the Celtics in the 60s a super team? Were the Lakers with Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain a super team? Were the Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Roscoe Parrish Celtics not a super team? Were the Bulls in the 90s not a super team? Were the Rockets not a super team? Was Charles Barkley not trying to team up with everybody in his power to beat the Bulls? Are people dumb? Yes, the NBA has always been super team driven. Showtime Lakers, it's a team with a nickname. It's a super team. James Worthy, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It's a super team. There's a big 3 there. People act like LeBron was the first one to do this, and that's because NBA fans can't look at the similarities of the league in 1983 and 2013. They can't, because they can't think that complexly. The only people who can are the people who write about the sport, and even some of them. I just really can't. And every single NBA fan thinks they have an opinion. And that's the one thing. I think when you look at the way people view basketball, I can go play basketball right now, hit 4 threes, and think I'm the king of the world. But the difference is, I know when I leave that court, I'm still a very, very below average basketball player in the grand scheme of things. Anybody else? There's players. I have a friend personally, 2-3 years ago, legitimately told me he thinks he can play in the G League. I looked at him, I said, you know that's a professional sports league, right? And he looked at me dead serious. And that is NBA Twitter, all right? NBA Twitter thinks they can be a GM, a coach, a player in the league, and none of them can. I'm going to be honest. If you're playing at LA Fitness, I'm not knocking you, but you're not an NBA player. You did not miss. If you never made your high school basketball team, and you're under the height of 6'5", you're not an NBA player. All right? And I'm talking all three. Varsity freshman, JV, all of them. If you didn't make any of those, not going to be a professional basketball player. Not any of that Michael Jordan. He got cut from his varsity team. But back to the topic I want to actually discuss. All right? The Brooklyn Nets are rumored to be chasing James Harden. Kyrie Irving doesn't want him. KD wants him so badly, he's talking about it in his burner accounts. All right, so a lot of people are like, oh my God, the league's over. Those same unintelligent people who think they can play in either the G League or something else, be the general manager of the team because they're good at my GM mode once they put all the sliders one way. And they're like, oh my God, my team just went 87-0. Turn off the trade blocks. I could be good at being a GM too if I had all the rules in my favor. It's not a challenge. But where we take this a little further is the idea that three ball-dominant wing players can be great. Now, Jared Allen is a good fit for that group. He'll be a good high ball screener. He'll be a good rebounder, good at getting putbacks, and he's not a guy who needs to be getting a ton of touches. All right, but James Harden, that usage rate he's had in Houston, he's not giving that up. Kyrie Irving, the usage rate he had in Brooklyn last year and with the Celtics year before, he's not giving that up. And Kevin Durant's the best player on the team. Is Sniper walking? He's not giving up. He's the dog, okay? And I can honestly see Kevin Durant taking the third fiddle, just relinquishing it all because of the pressure of the other two, and the team being much worse for it. It's going to be a project. When you look at teams that have put together super rosters, they rarely ever win in their first year. All right? Cavs, Heat, other super teams, the 76ers, whatever they were trying to build, didn't win. Spent a lot of money. The Heat didn't build a super team, but they built a really well thought out team. I'm just saying it takes time to build these cultures, build these winning teams together. And you're not just going to throw a bunch of Nets bench players with KD, Kyrie, and James Harden because there's no true leadership in that room, okay? When you look at the Warriors teams, Kevin Durant wasn't the leader. It was Steph Curry. It was Draymond Green. It was Klay Thompson. Those are the three leaders of that team. And Kevin Durant came in and was a paid gun. All right, Kawhi Leonard on the Toronto Raptors, same boat. He made that team. He just took them to that next level. Great gamble by them. Still one of the best gambles in sports history. But the Nets aren't working. Okay, I'm just going to let you know. The personalities are all these weird alpha betas that need to be in charge but really want to share the moment with their team and want something more than basketball. Okay, so that doesn't work. Okay, James Harden, he's going to spend too much time at Magic City. Kevin Durant, he's going to spend too much time not being elite at basketball. And then Kyrie Irving, the earth is flat, dude. That says enough to me to discredit him from anything moving forward, all right? All right, so this is actually a pretty big story before I get into my NFL stuff. Robinson Cano got busted with PED, so we're going to do this. Breaking news! Robinson Cano, shortstop for a team in baseball. I don't even know where he's at anymore. I just know he's old. Busted with PEDs and suspended for a year. And the first thing I saw, he sticks a needle in him and shoots himself up with steroids, and the Astros guy who wore a wire didn't get suspended. All right. Very different scenarios, first off. PEDs, I mean, they've been out of the sport for 20 years. You're not allowed to use them. It's very established rules. But sign stealing, the reason that the Astros didn't get in much trouble, well, yes, what they did was wrong. But I'm not here to defend them, but I'm here to tell you why. All right. Could any of you guys find me the rule that said you couldn't do exactly what they did? I know it's wrong, but if you can, show it to me. Show me the rule in the rule book that said it. Because I know in Major League Baseball, the rules on PEDs are very, very clear. I don't know about the rules of sign stealing. I know sign stealing is a big part of baseball. I know understanding what pitch is coming and trying to signal it in is a huge part of the Little League World Series. It's a huge part of high school baseball, and it's a huge part of the minor leagues and Major League Baseball. But in reality, PEDs are so obvious. And Robinson Cano's been a user before. He's used PEDs. He's been busted before. It's time, and he deserves 162 games. I don't care how old he is. PEDs are bad. They're bad for you. They're illegal for a reason. And unfortunately, they are rampant in professional sports because of the pressures put on the athletes and the need to create longevity and still hit with power later into your career. Cano deserves 162 games. He'll appeal. He'll probably get it cut down to 81. He won't be eligible for the postseason if his team makes it. But it's much different than the suspension. It's hard to punish an entire team. The players were complicit on the Astros. I understand that. But it's not. They're not the same situation. Way different. All right. And now we're talking to the sport I actually like. It's time to talk football. All right. 2 topics, then we're going to hit the NFL whip around of the weekend. Talk about some matchups. But first, and I'm usually never impressed by this, but I've been impressed with this quarterback since the time he was drafted. Since the time he won the Heisman Trophy, since the time this year began, Joe Burrow was asked by a reporter, how are you going to evaluate the rest of your season aside from wins and losses? To which he responded in the way only Joe Burrow could, with the words, wins and losses. The Bengals are terrible. All right, the Bengals do not have a good offensive line. They have really good receivers, I'm going to be honest. But everywhere else outside of their quarterback, their running back, and their receivers is awful. Worse than the league level. And unfortunately, their defensive ends aren't bad either. I like Sam Hubbard. He's a good player. They have some talent coming, okay? They're building something in Cincinnati. And it's not whatever his name, Mike Brown's, anything to do with him. But when you look at the Bengals, Joe Burrow's been a mightily successful quarterback in his first year. Yes, they got torched by the Steelers, but most teams have. But where I saw them really turn the tide was in their 2 games against the Colts, number 1, and the Browns, number 2. I saw a team that was competitive. I saw a team that fought from first minute to last minute. And at the beginning, I read an article at the beginning of this year that said Joe Burrow is going to have to teach the Bengals how to win. That's a lot of pressure for a rookie quarterback. That's not whose shoulders it should lay on. But the Bengals culture over the last 40, 50 years has been that of failure, and you could see it. And their wins this year have come against the Jaguars and the Titans. Okay, so they've only won twice. But those 2 wins were monumental, and they've been competitive in not one, but in all but 2 games this year. They have been in it till the end, winning 2 of them. All right, the Browns needed a miracle to beat them the second time. The Colts needed a miracle to beat them too. There were just moments of time where you really thought the Bengals can easily be 4-3 right now. And I know Bengals fans don't want to hear that at all. But that starts with your quarterback coming in and competing right away. All right, he's a competitor. You've got a very winnable game against Washington this week. You got a very winnable game against the Giants the week after. The Dolphins game's probably going to be tough for the Bengals. But then you got the Cowboys, the Steelers, the Texans, and the Ravens. I think you can go reasonably 3-3 down the stretch, finish the year off with 4 wins, still get a good draft pick, go 4-11-1. It's a good year. It's a lot of improvement. But even 5 wins is possible. 6 wins is possible. It's not out of the realm of possibility. And it's all, of all the teams that I've seen improve from week 1 to now, it's the Bengals who improved the most. And coming off a bye week, you were going to hopefully get a better effort against the Steelers. But sometimes you can't expect, full-on growth right away. I think Joe Burrow, and this is why I wanted to bring this up. When I talk about generational players and generational talents, it all connects. This show is all connecting, intertwining somehow. I didn't even really plan this to connect the way it did. But when I talked about generational talent being missed in this NBA draft, I think Joe Burrow and Tua and Justin Herbert are those quarterbacks that are going to last an entire decade. The ones we thought of, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, that whole crew. This is a better crew than that. Tua's going to be an elite quarterback for a long time. Justin Herbert's going to be an elite quarterback for a long time. Joe Burrow, you can see it in the way they not only prepare, but the way they talk and visualize and are able to just go out there and do what they do. All right. There's 5 or 6 elder statesmen left in the league, and there are 4 or 5 young quarterbacks who I really believe in. And I think Joe Burrow leads the pack. I think I am not going to become a Bengals fan. I am going to enjoy the rivalry for the next 5 to 10 years, however long it lasts, going this way, because it's been a lot of fun. The Browns-Bengals games have been 2 of the funnest football games this year. Browns fans are not. And I'm excited to see how both these 2 teams end up developing their talent, how much they end up growing, because both teams historically have horrible luck. And I see the Ravens struggling and flailing around. I see the Steelers getting younger at a lot of positions, but really old at the most important one. So there's going to be a wide open AFC North for years to come. And I think it's going to be a battle between Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson. And it's going to be so fun. All right. Now, next on the list, we've got the Flailing Birds, the Seattle Seahawks. They have struggled the last few weeks. And I'm not here to hate. They were one of my Super Bowl picks early in the year. I really liked them. I thought their defense was going to improve a little bit, but it hasn't at all. But after this game against the Cardinals, they have one of the easier schedules in the league to close out the year. So they play the Cardinals. So if they win this one, they've got the Eagles, the Giants, the Jets, the Washington football team. There's 4 wins right there for a team like the Seahawks. So, all right, 10-4. Then you got to beat the Rams and the 49ers. The Seahawks are making the playoffs. I don't think there's any questions about it. Yeah, absolutely. I think Russell Wilson, I think they're flailing, but I'm buying them. That's part of the NFL whip around. That's how we're getting started. Russell Wilson's going to start cooking again. Let Russ cook. NFL. It's just the truth. I think this is going to be, if you guys remember the first Seattle Seahawks and Arizona Cardinals game this year, it was one of the best, all right? All right, moving on to the next game on the list, Steelers-Jaguars, 10 a.m. Sunday. Steelers are going to win this one. The Jaguars, sorry, they're bad. They're bad. The Lions-Panthers, that could go either way. Flip a coin. I really like what Matt Patricia is doing with the defense. I really like Matthew Stafford. But I really like what Matt Rule's doing with his defense, and I really like what Teddy Bridgewater has been able to accomplish on that team. They've got weapons, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel, and so on and so forth. Patriots, Texans, I think the Texans pull this one out. I think the Patriots came away with an emotional win last week. I like the Patriots and what they're doing. Bill Belichick really is a mastermind. It's a question of everything they accomplish from here on out is on Bill Belichick's shoulders and not anybody else. So it's his coaching at this point versus the other team's preparation. And if he out-prepares and beats you, with that roster he has currently, it once again proves that he's the greatest coach of all time. Titans, Ravens. All right. This is a game of two teams that have recently hit struggle. The Ravens have a very elite run defense. I know last year the Titans ran amok against them, but that's where the battle is going to be. Derrick Henry versus the Ravens run defense led by Patrick Queen and their defensive line. Will they be able to limit Derrick Henry and make Ryan Tannehill beat them? And then on the other side, will the Ravens be able to establish a run with J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, so on and so forth, and then let Lamar Jackson throw and run like they do? Will the Titans have an answer for it? I think the pass game they have an answer to every week. They have a very good defensive backfield. Everywhere else, though, it's going to be interesting. All right, Eagles-Browns. Browns by 50, everybody. I don't think it's a question. Die, Eagles, die. That's the motto I'm living by this week. Falcons-Saints. Saints by 15 with Jabu wins. Jameis Winston leading the way. Bengals-Washington. Like I said, the Bengals are going to win this week. Jets-Chargers. I'm taking the Jets. You know what? Screw the Chargers. The Chargers have disappointed me week in and week out. They've killed two parlays. They are the worst team. I hate them, and they can go die. But really, I don't think the Jets are going to win. I think the Chargers are going to beat them. Nope, not playing that game. Dangerous game. Dolphins-Broncos. Dolphins defense, very elite. Drew Lock, very not elite, unfortunately. I think he's a good quarterback. Needs keep developing. We'll see what he can be. The Dolphins defense locks down Denver mile high, wherever they're at. Doesn't matter. Dolphins defense by 15. Tua gets the job done in the cold weather. Cowboys-Vikings. This game can go either way. It's all going to be whose running back is better on that day. Packers-Colts. I got the Packers, but I think the Colts can give them a very good game. Phillip Rivers is playing some of the best football of his career. Long career, a lot of kids involved. Sidearm release. I really like the development of a lot of the Colts receivers. Michael Pittman Jr., the utilization of Naheem Hines in a lot of creative ways has been genius level intellect, 4D chess type stuff. Michael Pittman Jr., T.Y. Hilton's back. They've got a good dosage of some tight ends there. Continuing up the list, our defense, Darius Leonard and co. is legit, and they're going to be challenging. The Raiders won the first game. Will the Chiefs respond? Absolutely. I think the Chiefs beat the Raiders by at least 20 points this week in a revenge game. But never count Derek Carr and the Raiders out, because every time I do, they come back and they win. All right, Rams-Buccaneers, the last one. I think the Buccaneers had an offensive explosion and used way too much of it. The LA Rams come into this. Sean McVay's very prepared. Jared Goff playing some really good football. They've got a very good balanced backfield with the running backs they're using. I like what I've seen from the receivers of late. Their defense is playing good football. The Buccaneers obviously have weapons galore. Tom Brady, regardless, I still think the Rams win Monday night. And to close out the show, this is the best Monday Night Football game I think that's been billed in like 5 years, ever since John Gruden left. So that's how we're going to close out the show on a positive note. NFL whip around. All right, on Monday, I do not know what we're going to be talking about. A lot can change from here till then. Follow me on Twitter to stay updated with all those changing things. Chris Rennie, CFB. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and rate the show. Hopefully you guys enjoyed spending your time with me today. Hopefully you learned something. And that's how we're signing out. Adios, muchachos.